I call the meeting to order. Welcome to the 35th meeting of the Standing Committee on Public Accounts. Pursuant to Standing Order 1083G and the motion adopted by the committee on October 4th, 2022, the committee is meeting today as part of its study on Report 2, the Greening the Government Strategy, Reports 1 to 5 from the Commissioner of the Environment.
Who've all had a chance to make opening remarks. I will be relying today particularly heavily on the clerk just to help navigate questions, because I'm just not able to see the floor as well as I would like. This is certainly a downside of having committees on Fridays, but that is the Parliament we have been given, so we're going to try to make it work to the best of our ability. From the Office of the Auditor General, we have Mr. Jerry DeMarco, returning again, Commissioner of the Environment and Sustainable Development. Mr. Milan Duvignac. From the Department of National Defense, we have Bill Matthews, Deputy Minister, Nancy Tremblay, Associate Assistant Deputy Minister, Material, Salim Sattar, Director General, Environment and Sustainable Management. From the Department of Transportation, we have Michael Keenan, Deputy Minister, Ross Izzadin, Director General, Air, Marine and Environmental Programs. Finally, from the Treasury Board, we have Graham Flack, Secretary of the Treasury Board of Canada, Jane Keenan, Acting Executive Director, Centre for Greening Government, Malcolm Edwards, Senior Engineer, Centre for Greening Government. As I've mentioned, you've all given your opening remarks. I appreciate you coming back on relatively short notice to conclude this, or to continue and then to conclude our examination into this Auditor General report from the Commissioner of the Environment and Sustainable Development. So we're going to start right away with questions. The first round will give each member 6 minutes each. So I'm going to start with you, Mr. McCauley, from the Official Opposition. The floor is yours for 6 minutes.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. And looking at Mr. Matthews, and Mr. Matthews is looking at me, and we've had enough time to discuss things over Ogo, so I'm not going to go to you at all, Mr. Matthews. I'll go to for a shock. I'm going to start with Treasury Board, please. Actually, I'm going to start with Mr. DeMarco, Mr. How do I pronounce your name, sir? Dubnik. As I asked the AG, how confident are you in the responses from the departments to your reports that we will actually see action and achieve our goals? Give me a 0 to 10, 0 being the usual, 10 being good heavens, they're doing something.
Thank you. So with the exception of the response to recommendation 63, we are satisfied with the full agreement from the Treasury Board and the two departments to all of the recommendations. And we've also had a chance to look at their subsequent action plans that have been filed as well. So those responses, if acted upon, should go a long way towards getting them to the high number.
What's your confidence that they'll be
8 or 9?
Yeah. What's your confidence level that they'll be acted upon?
Well, that's difficult to say. It depends on the will and the resources that are brought to bear in the implementation. Okay. I think that question is best directed to the departments in terms of their intentions and whether they have the resources to implement the action plans.
Mr. Flack, I'm going to switch over to Treasury Board. I want to just get on the record, who is ultimately responsible for this program? It is Treasury Board, but we've heard constantly through the years, Treasury Board sets rules and then steps away and says, that's where our responsibility ends. My understanding, Treasury Board is responsible and is responsible for following up with the departments to ensure these goals are being met. Am I correct there?
Departments are individually accountable for each of their actions. The Treasury Board sets guidance around those actions. But
do you have a role besides guidance? Does it end at setting the rules?
Yeah, more than that. The department has provided, as was indicated in the auditor's report, tools that departments use to allow them to develop their plans. To analyze those plans, we developed the Open Government Portal data reporting that allows us to pull together all the data around those plans.
But what I'm trying to get at is we're several years into this process. And why does it take an Auditor General report to get us to this table to say, this is not being done, this is not being done. How do we prevent this from happening again? Again, I understand Treasury Board is responsible, but where does your responsibility end? You make the rules, set the goals, and then walk away?
No, I think in this case, we can see there has been tremendous progress, including on the actual emissions themselves, where we are several years ahead of schedule.
Yeah, I understand. I'm sorry, you're ahead of schedule?
In terms of the reported emissions on the 1 and 2 for the area where we had a 40% target for 2025, those are reporting ahead. So I don't think this is a case of no action having been taken. I think there was the first plan was 2017, there's a subsequent plan in 2020. With each subsequent plan, we increased the level of reporting. We've been following that plan. For example, the reason we had not planned to do,
I'm just going to say it's Treasury Board responsible for leading reporting, mandated lead and coordinate, integrate knowledge, and track and disclose performance information. Do you believe Treasury Board has been successful?
I believe we're on a trajectory to get where we had planned to get, and each subsequent plan is getting us closer. So if I look at the first and second level of emissions, on those we have good reporting as planned. We will move to complete that in level in the third report. Yes, this is a journey. It was always designed to be a journey as laid out in the original plans in terms of what we're doing. So I don't want you to leave with the impression that had there not been an Auditor General's report, many of the things that were in here were already on track.
And I appreciate what you're leaving us with. I just want to express concern that every single time we have departments in front of us in this meeting, goals are not achieved, but we're always told it's a journey. We heard like horrific stories from Veterans Affairs with their failures, 7 years in, missing goals, but it's a journey. And I just want to ensure that this is not another example of we're not going to achieve goals because it's a journey. One of the comments from the AG, we found the Treasury Board did not report some sources of federal greenhouse gas emissions. Why not?
Because of the complexity in reporting. So in the original plans, the first and second plans, the aim was to capture the scope 1 and 2 emissions, which are relatively direct and easier to report. Scope 3 emissions are much more complicated to develop. They need methodologies around them. So for example...
Let me just interrupt with that. I understand that. Do we have the mechanism set up then, or is this an impossible goal to achieve that we need to reset and publicize that this is not going to happen?
No, we are on track. Indeed, some of the level of the Scope 3 emissions, the travel emissions, have been reported for several years. We completed international work with some international partners, and since February, another huge piece of that, the procurement piece, has now been reported. And we're working now on a third piece to that, which is commuting emissions. So in a very methodical way, we've been building on those. So we think it is achievable. But as committee members would know, Scope 3 emissions, where one draws the line at how far one goes is quite far. But if I contrast this, say, to the private sector, Bloomberg did a survey of 13,000 companies, only 20% have reported.
I'm going to go to the last couple of questions. There is the issue about Crown Corps.
Mr. McCall, you really have time for a quick statement. You're really out of time, so I'm going to cut you off there. Turning now to Ms. Yip, you have the floor for 6 minutes, please.
Thank you to so many witnesses for coming today on this important report, and I think that climate change does not wait for anyone, so it's great to see all of you here today. Mr. Flack, it's been indicated that the government is ahead of its targets in its greening efforts, which is always wonderful. What did the government do to exceed its previous targets on emission reductions?
Well, I'll turn to Malcolm, who's really the expert around this. I think there's been good progress across departments in how we proceed, but I should highlight that the COVID context has, for many companies and governments as well, reduced emissions as a result of reduced activity, which is part of the improvement in the last 2 years, but there was steady improvement before. But Malcolm, as you're the expert in the area, maybe you want to comment on the progress that's been made and your confidence that we're tracking to stay above the 40% target by 2025.
Yes, thank you. So our pre-COVID emissions from real property and conventional fleet were reduced by 34.6%. After the first year of the pandemic, they were reduced by 40.6%. So we did see a significant reduction due to COVID. This year's emissions we expect to lie between those two numbers. Those emission savings were achieved by retrofitting real property, procuring clean electricity, building zero carbon buildings, procuring zero emission vehicles. We have a commitment in the strategy too to procure 100% clean electricity by 2025. So we're close to the 40% reduction, and with that procurement of clean electricity, we feel quite comfortable that we'll meet that 2025 target we've established.
Okay. Thank you. One of the recommendations stated that the Treasury Board should develop an approach to track costs and savings to provide decision makers, parliamentarians, and Canadians with sufficient information about the estimated costs and savings to achieve the 2050 net zero target. And it appears that the Treasury Board disagreed. So can you elaborate on why the Treasury Board disagreed?
Sure. I'll start, and then Malcolm can complete. So we have an approach. It's an approach used by our colleagues in the General Services Administration in the U.S., by NASA, and by Harvard. It's an approach that looks, for example, in the energy retrofit area, where you take a building at the front end, you cost in a detailed way the upgrades, the savings that are going to emerge from those upgrades through a life cycle cost analysis. And that gives you upfront, when you're taking those decisions, the costing that you need to be able to do that and calculate the greenhouse gas emissions. In addition, we track by building, individual building in government, the greenhouse gas emissions. So there is a methodology we have. It's a methodology used by other leading organizations internationally. But Malcolm's been instrumental in help developing. So Malcolm, you can maybe elaborate on this.
Great, thank you. Yes, as I said, we focus on the upfront cost to enable decision makers right at the beginning of the project to know essentially the value and the amount of carbon savings they're getting out of that project. So it's based on life cycle cost analysis and total cost of ownership. We just recently met with the Canadian Association of Quantity Surveyors. So those are the professionals that cost, for example, real property project. They're developing an international coalition with the US, UK, and many other countries right now to develop an international costing standard on real property, which includes emissions reduction, which is very similar to the approach we've had in place now for a couple of years. I'll give you a very quick example of what we do on real property. We ask for essentially a life cycle cost over 40 years, which is normally the lifespan of a building before it gets retrofitted. We ask for the cost of business as usual if you built it to code. We ask for the cost of taking it all the way to zero. And we ask for the cost of being cost neutral. So cost neutral would essentially be cost neutral by the utility savings we'd have over that 40-year period of time, and the cost of carbon we would be saving in terms of using lower carbon fuels. Very quickly for fleet, we've looked at total cost of ownership. For light-duty vehicles, it's now more cost-effective for the government to buy an electric vehicle than a classic combustion vehicle. That's because you save 80% on fuel costs, you save half on maintenance costs, you don't pay any carbon taxes on that. So it's actually more cost-effective now for the government to go directly to buy a low-emissions vehicle.
Okay, thank you. Mr. or Commissioner DeMarco, what should we expect to see in the next revision of the greening government strategy? What do you think we should see next?
So we're expecting another version. We've had the 2017, the 2020, and I believe the next version will be 2023. So we would like to see, first of all of our recommendations implemented in the strategy, those that are directed towards Treasury Board. We would like to see some of the things that were optional in the first strategy to become mandatory. For example, Crown corporations, as Member Macaulay was just talking about, a better grasp of Scope 3 emissions, and and a more robust approach to costs and savings than what was just described by Mr. Edwards. So that would contain the items in paragraph 2.62 of our report. So we'd like to see, for expenditures as large as this, the upfront costing is great and the savings is great, but in terms of being able to course correct, we would like to see more ongoing monitoring of progress, regular reporting, and so on. So those would be some of the elements that we would like to see in the new strategy. And
Et voilà, merci beaucoup. Désolé, le temps a écoulé.
Thank you. Your time's up. We'll now go to Ms. Sinclair Denage. You have 6 minutes. Please proceed. Well, thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I'd like to thank the many witnesses who've come today to committee. We appreciate it. And sorry you're not in your regular chair here with us today, Mr. Chair. In light of the report that was put out, and I'd like to thank the Commissioner, we can identify and express some doubts with respect to the targets and the ability to achieve them. Is the government putting in place what it needs in order to meet the targets that were issued by the federal government to reduce its contribution to global greenhouse or climate change? Many parts of the report are showing that the drop in greenhouse gas emissions, as you said in the answer to my colleague, were linked to the pandemic. Now, what we're not seeing are concrete answers, steps, measures on means and ability to achieve those objectives, to hit them. I have a question, Mr. Commissioner, about the report, and I'd like you to identify some of the main issues and I'll ask some more questions on that once you're done. Well, thank you. One example, at National Defense, we weren't assured that they would be meeting their targets, and the department itself said that it needed additional resources to achieve them. So that shows some shortcomings with the objectives and the plan. We need greater detail, and defense likely needs more resources. So that's one example from our report. Question. Well, then, to follow up, were the resources identified, requested? Have they been identified? Have those resources been identified? And have you requested them from the department, from the Treasury Board? Well, thank you, Mr. Chair, for the question. As we indicated at National Defense, we have worked to finalize our plans for 2050 to achieve the objectives. We will be able to increase our progress with additional resources, but we do need to identify additional ideas, etc., to achieve the goals for 2050. So we have some work to do. So when do you plan to do that then, Mr. Deputy Minister? When will that work be done? Yes, when? In the years to come. We've got some years to achieve these objectives for the time being. For 2022-2050.
But we have work to do to identify additional initiatives to reduce emissions across all three areas: vehicles, building retrofit, but also the emissions caused by our planes and ships and other vehicles like that. So there's work to do. We've got some time. But I think that's the importance of this report, Mr. President, is it does indicate where we are on track in the short term, work to do in the long term, and we'll keep going.
Quand vous dites que vous êtes
Well, when you say that you're on the track in the short term, and I hope you won't deny that it's thanks to the pandemic then, or because of the pandemic. Well, clearly our activities decreased or were decreased during the pandemic. That accounted for 7% of the reduction.
Into our calculations, and we know that our operational tempo will go back up, so we can't take too much credit for the 7% reduction because of COVID activities. That's been factored in.
D'accord. Donc, par rapport,
So then, if everyone had remained healthy, if no one had gotten COVID, in an ideal world, what would your reductions have been then?
Without COVID, we were still on track to meet the 2025 target ahead of schedule. The 2050 target, I mentioned 7% is kind of our estimated impact on COVID. So where we currently estimate, it was said in the report, I believe, we think we'll achieve 63% reduction by 2050. With additional resources, we've identified up to 83%. That leaves a gap, so we still have some work to do.
D'accord. Et donc, je me retourne vers Monsieur le Commissaire.
And now back to the Commissioner. If there hadn't been a pandemic, how many departments would have been on the right track? Answer. Well, that depends on whether we're talking about Scope 1, 2, or 3, direct or indirect emissions. Also Crown corporations. So I can't give you a number with that. With Scope 1, they're on the right track. That's 2.2. But that's just one aspect of all of the emissions. It's some 2 megatons for 1 and 2, Scope 1 and 2, 5 megatons for Scope 3. So there's a lot of work to do. Now, I'd like to respond to one other aspect. In paragraph 2.4, yes, we have time between 2050. However, the earlier the reductions are, the better the impact will be, because greenhouse gas emissions last for a long time. So we're looking at a climate crisis. Thank you. That's 6 minutes. Time is up. It's going very quickly here today.
For 6 minutes, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and of course, all remiss that you're not here with us today, but I want to thank all the witnesses for being present with us again. I know the last meeting, it's tough when you have your testimony, and then we had a bit of a break, but now we've returned to this, so I just want to thank everyone for your time here, and I want to thank the Commissioner for your report. I know that this is a pretty large issue for Canadians, in particular in relation to the pandemic. You know, the pandemic has certainly changed how the government and how regular Canadians look at their own emissions. And we've seen across the country and we've seen across the world the global reduction in greenhouse gases because of the pandemic, because of reduced activities. And so it was just mentioned in previous, I think it was Mr. Matthews who mentioned the percentage, it was calculated into the 40.6 reduction. Can you explain the methodology and how you got to calculate that 7% of emissions beyond the pandemic reductions?
Certainly, I can start, and other colleagues may wish to weigh in. So essentially, we know our operational tempo was down. So that's workers in buildings as well as actual activity with our vehicles and things like that. Travel is way down. It's back up this year to about 80% of pre-pandemic. So that was the data that went into it. TBS, as was already mentioned, has provided departments with some models and tools, but I'm not sure. Do you want to, Salim, if you want to add details on the methodology itself?
Yeah, so prior to the pandemic, our emissions at National Defence were about 31%, and then we saw them go up to 38%. So that's where the 7% gap is. The COVID impact versus the impact from emission reduction initiatives are hard to attribute or allocate. So the tempo, no question, the reduction in tempo from operational activity contributed to that 7%, but we're also confident that the measures that we've taken to reduce emissions are also contributing to that reduction.
See, I think this is the hard part for me to kind of grasp, and if it's hard for me, I think it's going to be difficult for Canadians to understand. You know, in some ways, I heard Mr. Flack talk about this, and a member from the Liberal bench as well talk about you're on track. And that sounds great and all, and it should be a good lesson for Canadians. However, my concern and my fear is that it's because of the pandemic, and without a strong rubric to calculate that, I don't think Canadians can trust that these reports are in fact accurate if we don't understand the methodology. And so in terms of actually how you're measuring the reduction due to COVID versus the reduction of your actions, these are difficult. This is a difficult question, I understand, considering this is like a very rare moment. But I'd like to ask the Commissioner, in your perspective of your review of this, is beyond COVID and COVID's own reduction in activities across the government, is the departmental plan within defense that you've reviewed sufficient for hitting their 2025 targets?
For defense. Well, I think they've indicated themselves that with the current resources, they are only in the 60% range, and within
2025 was his
Oh,
question.
2025, sorry. Thank you for that clarification. Yeah, it's best directed to the department. The trend line is going in the right way. We have the paragraph in the report indicating the progress that's being made, and even being able to attribute it to certain particular initiatives, including energy costs in Alberta, for example. So I think the trend is going in the right way on the Scope 1 emissions. And if they do implement and they have the resources they need to implement, then they should be on track.
Okay, and when thinking of on track, and I'm thinking about how defense, because defense is an incredibly important ministry in Canada, particularly and unfortunately, because of climate change, we're actually asking the Ministry of Defense to do more. And I can anticipate that your activities within Ministry of Defense will increase. We've seen that just recently. My colleagues and I, of course, in the emergency debate on the issue of in Nova Scotia and the Maritimes. We've seen huge climate disasters there. We've seen massive climate disasters in British Columbia. We've seen massive climate disasters across the prairies with drought, with wildfires. I imagine your activities and your ask to be deployed are going to increase. Without a credible or better form of response to these natural disasters, it's going to be the Ministry of Defense. And it's going to be your planes, it's going to be your equipment that's deployed more frequently. So I'm not exactly confident that you're going to hit those targets based on the fact that climate change, we're already in a climate battle. How do you imagine your increased activities as climate change continues to ravage our country? How are you going to imagine and build that into your prediction to actually hit that target?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So a couple of points. One, we're very confident about 2025. With COVID or without COVID, we were on track and, in fact, ahead of schedule. I'll come back, yes. And in terms of the activity and the draw on the Department of Defense in terms of responding to domestic climate change-related events, we have seen a trend go up. But when we do look at our climate change plans, it's, our plan's more comprehensive than that. It's our buildings, the retrofit to that. We are the biggest landlord in Canada. The vehicles we're procuring are now largely electric or hybrid.
But 2050.
By 2050, we still have some work to do, as I indicated. We have plans in place that we're confident will get us partway there. To get us all the way there, we still have some additional work to do. I think one of the things that will be interesting to track as time goes on is when you look at the fuel consumed by ships and planes and those things, how much greener will it get? And that will certainly play an impact in terms of the footprint from our operations.
Thank you very much, Mr. Matthews. That's my time.
And thank you very much. That is spot on. Turning to our second round now. MP Cram, you have the floor for 5 minutes, please.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Chair. My questions will be mostly for the representatives from the Department of National Defense. So is it fair to say that it is not realistic for National Defense to reach its 2050 net zero reductions targets, and we should start talking and acting and planning accordingly?
No, I don't think that's fair at all, Mr. Chair. I think the fact that we're ahead of schedule for the 2025 target of 40% is a good indication. As we've indicated, we have plans that we are confident will get us to 63% by 2050 with some additional money to 83%. But then that leaves a gap. And so the question is, what are you doing about that gap? And as I have mentioned, we have a bit of time, but as was mentioned by the Auditor General's Office, time is important on this file. So I think one of the questions we should come back to at this table in years to come is, what are your plans to get there by 2050, and have they developed? And that's a fair question.
Okay, so on page 8 of the report, there's chart 2.2. It says that for national defense and the RCMP and the Coast Guard, there's only been a 0.6% reduction from the 2005-2006 baseline year. So how, I don't understand how can it be realistic when we're only down 0.6%?
We may have to ask the Commissioner to speak to the report first, and I can chime in, but have you found it?
So you're looking at the first two cells in Exhibit 2.2?
That's right, yes.
Yeah. So the difference there is, if you go back to paragraph 2.7, it's the difference between departmental emissions and national safety and security fleet emissions. So they're definitely on track with the departmental. emissions. As Deputy Matthews just indicated, it is a challenge with respect to national safety and security fleet emissions in terms of ships, planes, and so on, and that's something that they can speak to as to their plans for that. But Cell 1 is just about the departmental emissions outside of national safety and security fleet emissions.
Okay, so then let's expand on that a little bit. So, according to the Pentagon, the F-35 fighter jets are expected to be in use until the year 2070. So what's going to happen in the year 2050? Are we going to ground the F-35 fighter jets? How would that possibly work?
No, I think the question is when you look at the assets employed for national security purposes, they are outside of the department, I'll call them the core departmental emissions. As I've indicated, lots of discussion with industry about what you do to make those types of fuels more efficient, more green, but that's work still to come. One of the key things you look at from a defense perspective is operational requirements. Obviously, a military and Air Force would obviously need planes to fly, and so I don't view grounding fleets as an option on that front. It's more a question back to industry of what can you do to make your products greener as time goes on.
Okay, but if the F-35 fighter jets can't get to net zero by 2050, then we don't achieve our goal. Is that accurate?
Do you want to go ahead?
So when we established that target with Treasury Board on national safety security emissions, we realized that it's harder to get to net zero 2050 on the military side. So they gave us some flexibility by allowing us to use carbon credits and carbon removal and carbon capture technologies. So in 2050, if we're still flying with fossil fuels, we're going to need to find a way to offset or capture those emissions. Now, let's be clear, that doesn't mean we don't do anything, right? We're going to look at cleaner fuels and cleaner platforms, cleaner operations. But if we're still burning fuel, we want to be able to offset that gap to net zero.
Okay, and similarly, the Navy is in the process of procuring 15 new frigates, and the life expectancy of those frigates is supposed to last until the 2080s. So again, are we accepting that it is not realistic for the frigates themselves to get to zero emissions, and we'll be looking at purchasing carbon offsets in the open market for those as well?
I think it's a bit of a repeat, Mr. Chair, of the same answer, which is we hope and encourage industry will do better to make fuel consumption more green. That being said, if we are still burning those fossil fuels, same answer. We've got the credits option.
Okay, and so it's looking like in 2050 we're going to be buying a significant amount of carbon offsets then. Can you explain to the committee how that will work? Like, do we have the market in place already that DND is planning to write the check to, or how will that work?
Go ahead. So the market is.
I'm afraid I'm afraid that is the time. I hope we come back to that question, but that is the time for now. Turning now to Mr. Fragascatos, you have the floor for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you to officials for being here. The question that I have will go to Defence and to Transport. In recommendation 2.88, it states the following, that both are advised to develop a risk management approach that defines significant risks and corresponding mitigation measures. I see that the recommendation has been agreed to. So both from National Defence and Transport, I'd like to hear where progress is on that. Perhaps we can begin with Mr. Matthews.
Certainly. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Work is underway. Obviously, if you're dealing with anything related to targets in the future, you want to have a sense of how realistic your plans are and what your risk mitigation measures are in case they are not working out as anticipated. So we've got a roadmap coming up, including a risk assessment. December 2023 is kind of a target we've got in mind to finalizing that risk assessment. Salim can probably add more detail, but
that's correct. So we're looking at risks and opportunities and costs to get to 2050. And so in about the next year or so, we'll have decarbonization plans for both the real property portfolio and the national safety security fleet. And that'll give us what we call a roadmap to 2050.
Mr. Chair, to kind of to provide the Transport Canada response, like our colleagues at DND, we're working on drafting out both the for us our carbon neutral roadmap, which lays out our plans out to 2050 and the risk management strategy, There's a, well, the carbon footprint is much smaller. Transport, I think, is a bit like we're unique in government in the sense that most departments, their carbon footprint is buildings. In transport, the vast majority is actually transportation fleet, and in fact, the majority is ferries. And so one of the key strategies to achieve the targets is actually switching to lower carbon fuels. And there's some very promising developments in broader industry in the development of low carbon fuels, but that also represents a risk. So that would be one of the key risks. A second issue is that in terms of dealing with our largest source of emissions, the current procurement of new ferries through Davie Shipyard is going to create a stepwise improvement in fuel efficiency and create opportunities for, we're designing diesel hybrids, so there will be some electric propulsion involved. And just the inevitable construction issues and ensuring that the construction of the new ferry stays on schedule will be a key issue and a key risk we're managing in terms of improving, staying on the carbon roadmap.
Thank you very much. Staying with recommendation 2.88, it says that there ought to be an effort made to continually identify new activities that will significantly contribute to emission reductions and prioritize them based on risk. I want to go to the second part of that, prioritizing based on risk. How exactly, I guess, what methodology do you use to carry out that prioritization? We can begin with defense and go to transport again.
Certainly, thanks. So the basic concept, Mr. Chair, on this would be you look at the likelihood of success around an initiative and also the payback you would get if it's realized. So you basically can plot out a chart that says if it succeeds, here's the bang you get for your buck. How risky is it? So it's a matter of basically when you develop your plans and the roadmap, it includes the risk assessment that would indicate which of the initiatives are more likely to succeed or also more likely to be on schedule as you then prioritize your investments, because there will be investments here. Salim, anything to add?
We have about 50 seconds.
No, I won't add anything.
Okay, okay. To transport then.
Very similarly, Mr. Chair, the strategy is calibrated on risk, but risk is a key determinant, but not the only one. And so, obviously, if we have two, for example, if we have two choices for things to invest in, they're going to have about the same scale of emission reductions or moving us towards carbon neutrality, and one is riskier than the other, then that would give us the methodology to take the less risky one. But there will be times when I think the risk management framework will allow us to take on more risk to try out new technologies and new procedures, because the prospect of emission reductions is worth the risk, and it allows us to better calibrate the risk reward in this transition. And we do have to take some risks. We do have to try new technologies in order to hit that carbon neutral target that we're striving for.
Thank you, Mr. Keenan.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Turning now, Madame Sinclair Desgagnés, vous avez la parole pour 2 minutes.
Go ahead. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And I'd like to go to the Treasury Board and ask about the fact that the bulk of emissions under Scope 3 were not produced. But I'd also like to talk about the strategy. It shows in the report from the Commissioner that there are significant greenhouse gas emissions. There's not a response. There are several departments that have not even published their results, and that the data that's published is a bit dubious. So, quite frankly, this is dubious strategy. I have a lot of questions, but I'd also like to focus on the fact that Crown corporations are huge, and they are significant emitters, and they weren't included in the analysis. So that's a huge part of the federal sphere. And we all know the situation that, yes, of course, the Crown corporations are independent. I don't want to hear talking about that. But why were the greenhouse gas emissions of these Crown corporations not included in these calculations? Answer. As you pointed out, Crown corporations have a different status. Boards, for example, and the Treasury Board rules don't apply to them in many cases. But that's not the problem. Well, that was the model, and it's the model that follows Parliament's decision to create Crown corporations that are independent, that more resemble the private sector more carefully. In the budget for 2021, Finance indicated that Crown corporations would have to follow
climate-related disclosures. Ça, c'est le modèle que M. Carney.
So that's the model that Mr. Carney is following for all private Crown corporations will have to be taken into account. We'll be considering the impacts. These rules will apply to them. Now there is the work done by Malcolm. And as we indicated to the Commissioner, we're going to be holding consultations with Crown corporations because of their independence. We need to ensure that this is done properly. And that's time's up. Thank you. Thank you again.
Floor for 2.5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And just want to now turn to the Treasury Board as well in relation to the Scope 3 emissions. And so I think it's important to me and Canadians to know, in your words, what is a Scope 3 emission? How are they being monitored to date? And what are the plans to continue to monitor them?
So I'm going to turn to Malcolm in a minute because he's the expert as the engineer. Scope 3 is more challenging than the other emissions because you often need to develop methodologies to be able to assess them. The easiest one for us to do is travel, and we've been reporting that since 2018, I think. The next one was trickier. Malcolm can describe the international group we put together of experts to help, but that was procurement, and that we have now been publishing since February. The third one we're tackling is commuting costs. That's a study with U of O and some others. But Malcolm, why don't you it's an area where the methodologies have to be sound, and Malcolm, maybe you can describe where we are on this and what's next.
Sure. Thank you for the question. So just to answer what Scope 3 is, it's probably easy to say what Scope 3 is not. So Scope 1 is fuel we burn, so gasoline, natural gas. Scope 2 is energy we use indirectly, so electricity. So we have scope of control over that because we can decide how much gasoline, how much electricity we use. So Scope 3 is all those indirect things. So if we fly somewhere, if we use a service, other companies are creating those emissions. So because they are indirect and those emissions are created by somebody else, it makes measurement of them more difficult. So we have been tracking those emissions, and we have basically worked with an association out of the University of Montreal and École Polytechnique and 2 Swiss universities. They have looked at our procurement over 3 years, and they have basically helped us develop those procurement-related emissions. It's true we had not published it, but we have now taken that information and put it on the web. As the Secretary mentioned too, we're looking at commuting, because in a hybrid environment, people are working from home, they're working from the office, so it's more sophisticated. We need to understand the global emissions. How much do you emit working from home compared to the office?
Thank you very much for that. And just quickly, if we can get Commissioner DeMarco, in your review of these emissions, the Scope 3 emissions, do you feel that there's a need to actually have a standardized framework to measure these, or are you satisfied with the work that
Very brief answer, please.
In Montreal?
Following international standards is something we would support as well. Scope 3 emissions of the government are often the Scope 1 emissions of the airline industry or the building manufacturer and so on. So they are traceable. It's just a matter of having a consistent framework.
Thank you very much. Turning now to Mr. Genuis, you have the floor for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. We know the Prime Minister talks a lot about encouraging others to reduce emissions. I was looking for information about his own personal emissions, including, for instance, through travel. My understanding is that despite the fact that he travels often with D&D, which would suggest that it should be categorized as Scope 1 based on my understanding of it at least, that information is not available. Is there information available about concretely the use of emissions associated with the Prime Minister's work and how much that is increasing or decreasing?
Just turn to Malcolm. I think we report emissions, the total emissions from flights. I don't think we sort of break it down to an individual flight by an individual person, but Malcolm, maybe you can help.
Sure. So thanks for the question. We track it on a departmental basis, so we don't itemize. So we basically get aggregated data from each department on their travel on an annual basis.
Okay, so the Prime Minister's office, do we have that data? Or is it broader than that even?
We only basically track the public service. So we track we don't track ministers' travel, we don't track MPs' travel. We just track on basically a departmental and agency basis.
Okay, so is it under, I guess I'm asking though, under which department are you tracking the Prime Minister's or individual ministers' travel? To be under their departments, or in the case of the Prime Minister, PCO?
If he flew on a defense plane, that would be part of, as you said, the Scope 1 emissions of that plane, that the national safety and security emissions that defense report to us. It wouldn't be itemized out.
Okay, so there currently is no way of pulling out the data on the level of emissions being produced by particular public figures, or whether those are going up or down. That data is not available.
No, and we're also careful on information we report and how we disaggregate it for safety and security reasons too. So we have to be aggregated to a certain level just to protect.
Right. I mean, the Prime Minister's itinerary is extremely public, though. I mean, there might be rare exceptions, but surely privacy or security wouldn't be the barrier in terms of knowing how the level of emissions produced by his travel, given the publication of the itinerary, right?
Yeah, the fact remains we don't itemize travel to that extent.
All right. I guess it's a worthwhile maybe point to consider, because I think the public wants to see politicians who talk about these issues, also revealing whether or not they are leading by example, and there's certainly been a lot of discussion around this. I want to also ask about, in terms of the Defense Department's current projections to 2050, the discussions around the fact that your current projections suggest a gap, that you on the current track will not achieve net zero by 2050, and therefore the proposal is to offset that through the purchase of carbon offsets in 2050. Do you have a projection of how much money the government would spend as part of our defense budget in 2050 to purchase offsets if we were to stay on the current trajectory?
Bit of a complicated answer, Mr. Chair. I think when I was referring earlier to the targets where we need additional measures to meet those targets, that was for departmental operations. Let's put aside for a moment the ships and planes, the national security type assets. So the 63% that we're currently on track for with existing measures, that's for operations. That's buildings, that's vehicles, not the national security type assets. I think there's still some work to be done by industry to see what kind of fossil fuel improvements they can make in terms of what you fly an F-35 with and what you fuel a ship with. As was mentioned, if those, to the extent those do not get reduced, and hard for me to speculate that far ahead, there is the option to purchase carbon credits. I have no sense at this stage of what the cost might be around that market.
Okay, but I mean, just to put a fine point on this, the plan of the government, it seems to be, is to other than speculative technologies which haven't been developed yet, to purchase carbon offsets. So I would like to know, and if you don't have that answer, I'd appreciate if you could report back to the committee how much money the Government of Canada is planning to spend on carbon offsets in 2050, because that money comes out of our defense budget. It comes out of money that could be otherwise spent on keeping Canadians safe. I don't anticipate that Russia, China, or Iran will be spending their defense budgets on carbon offsets. And it would be worth knowing where those carbon offsets would go.
Thank you.
So I'd appreciate a follow-up in writing with some of that information. Thank you.
Okay, noted, and thank you. Ms. Atwin, the floor is yours for 5 minutes. Nice to have you here today.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. It's nice to see a fellow New Brunswicker leading committee today. I'm joining you all from unceded, unsurrendered Wolastoq territory here in Fredericton, New Brunswick. And it's certainly an honor to be a part of this conversation today, and I thank all the witnesses for their important testimony. My initial question, I believe, would be best suited for Commissioner DeMarco. Several other countries, France, United Kingdom, United States, have implemented their own strategies or plans to reduce greenhouse gas emissions generated by their national governments. Is there any collaborative work or best practices being shared to work on emissions reductions?
So the colleagues from Treasury Board will be able to elaborate upon this, but Canada is part of a group of countries that is seeking to lead by example in greening government, and we've listed some in paragraph 5 of our report, but there's several dozen, and perhaps Treasury Board could elaborate on that.
Yes, so we basically have partnered with our colleagues in the US. So equivalent to the US is called the Council on Environmental Quality. It's based out of the White House. And so in the spring this year, we announced something called the Greening Government Initiative. That's a collaboration of, I think, up to 50 countries right now where we're sharing basically best practices, guidance, etc. Our last meeting we had in September, the president of the Treasury Board opened the meeting, and it focused on fleet activities. Both Canada, Norway, and I believe Israel presented on how they're doing to decarbonize their conventional fleets.
Excellent. Thank you very much. It's going to take all of us, I think, for this grand project that we're undertaking. My next question I'd like to direct, I think, to perhaps Mr. Flack. So recommendations, would you happen to have any recommendations, advice, or insights into what the House of Commons may do to green its operations, taking our own responsibility in this piece?
I hesitate to give advice to the House of Commons. I can say there's one project you may be interested in terms of how the Commons is actually heated and cooled. An upgrade to the heating facility that's near the Supreme Court of Canada. So that is being converted to a facility that will be just about exclusively powered through hydroelectric power from Quebec. There's also a major upgrade of the pipes to increase their energy efficiency. So that will be a major step forward in greening the heating and cooling of the house. That's an example of something where the rest of the government's facilities are able to help. But I think what I've learned from folks like Malcolm is just taking a systemic approach at the structural level when you have the opportunities to make the change, as you did in developing this building at the West Block, that it's very difficult to get significant efficiencies when you're retrofitting. It's when you're doing a major structural change to the building. That's when you want to really go to the max so that you can get the 40-year benefit out of those savings. So that's why I think very core to the Government of Canada meeting its emissions, and buildings are obviously a huge part of that, is as each building comes up for its life cycle renewal, just taking the maximum opportunity to invest in net zero capabilities is really, really critical, because that opportunity doesn't come along very often.
Excellent. Thank you very much. And finally, for Commissioner DeMarco as well, what challenges have you found in implementing the greening government strategy that may be resolved through Parliament, such as regulations that may need to be amended?
So those are decisions for Parliament to make, but one example arising from a question a few minutes ago is Crown Corporations, for example. Obviously, Canada is the shareholder of Crown Corporations. It chose that vehicle for those lines of business as the shareholder and the lawmaker. Obviously, the Parliament, Canadians and Parliament can require Crown Corporations to be subject to the greening government strategy. TBS itself could only encourage them, but Parliament or executive action could be used as an example of requiring something to be done instead of just encouraging it. That would be one example.
That is about the time. Thank you very, very much. Turning now to our last round, probably our last round for the time is eclipsed. Mr. McCauley, you have the floor for 5 minutes, please.
Great. Mr. Flack, I want to follow up on comments about Crown Corp, CPPIB's massive investments in countries, developing countries are not known for especially having any care for environment. Are we tracking those at all? And should they be part of this?
So one of the reasons we need to do the consultations on the Crown Corps is, as you indicated, the investment vehicles the government has, including CPPIB. There are questions on how they should be measuring emissions. The emissions of their core operations might be straightforward.
But we're not tracking them at all.
Right now, that is not being tracked, and that's one of the things we've committed based on the Commissioner's recommendation to go back and consult on. But that is, I would say, for all of those investment vehicles, that's part of what the International Task Force is working on.
I'm going to interrupt because I got a couple of quick questions for you. I know the public accounts just came out. I looked, I wasn't able to find it, but then I didn't look that carefully. Do we break out how much we're paying per year for carbon assets or carbon offsets? And have we projected what it's going to be in carbon offsets to reach our goals?
The projection point, as Bill indicated, will depend on how the technologies develop. So, for example, on the building front,
do we have? Is it separated in the public accounts, or would you provide to this committee what we paid last year for those?
If my mic's, yes, thank you. Thank you for the question.
It's a simple yes or no. Do we have them?
We currently do not use carbon offsets, so they would not appear in the public accounts.
Okay, so we're not buying anything right now. This is a future plan. Okay. Would you be able to provide to the committee Squadron 412, 437 that do the VIP flights? Would you be able to provide the committee perhaps, say, the last 10 years of the carbon or the emissions from those flights?
That'd be a question for National Defence if they could break that out from
Mr.
those
Matthews?
individual flights.
We'll have to take that one away, Mr. Chair, to see if we can.
Real quick question for you. Has D&D done a study or looked at if there's any degradation to our ability for our forces to run their operations as we look at carbon neutrality? Like, are we putting our men and women at risk by saying, well, use this fuel for the T-26 or the F-35?
At this stage, Mr. Chair, operational capability is still paramount at Defence, so there's been no decisions or assessments of things that would put force at risk. The investments to date have all been around things like building greening and buying electric vehicles, so no operational impacts.
Ballpark, I know D&D is the largest building owner, square footage. Ballpark me how much is from our buildings operations in Canada, and how much is for national security operations abroad?
Salim, are you able to take that? If not, we'll have to come back.
Yeah, we don't break it down by deployed operations versus domestic. We'll have to look at that.
Should we not be doing that? Like, how are we going to get to net 50 if we can't?
Yeah. So the challenge is, where do you buy your fuel, right? So if you're in deployed ops and you're buying the fuel as part of a joint mission, we wouldn't account for that consumption or those emissions.
So if the fuel to run a frigate is not bought here, it doesn't emit. There's no emissions. It sounds like you're saying.
Yeah, so it's scope one for the country that sold it to us, right, as opposed to who's burning it. So we'll have to look at whether we can disaggregate it for based on where we buy the fuel.
Okay. Transport, just very quickly, how much of your plan to get to net zero is going to rely or be not held hostage, but is going to rely on innovation? So much of your cars, trucks, et cetera, how much is going to be relied on future innovation?
It's a great question, Mr. Chair.
And it's not a criticism; it's a reality for your department.
Some of it is coming from just changing management practices. Some of it is coming from adopting different kinds of equipment. So it's a mix. I'll give you two examples quickly. Our National Aero Surveillance Program, we have a series of Dash 7s and 8s that fly to find and prosecute polluters at sea and also protect whales. We're beginning to shift some of the missions from a Dash 8 to a drone, and we're getting, in some, we can't switch all missions, but we're switching some. We get the same information for the same purpose.
Interrupt quickly? How much is going to rely on future innovation? How much is just going to rely on updating perhaps fleets, like you just mentioned?
So,
Mr. McCauley, I hate
so
to
that's
do
a
this,
great-
but your time is out again. I'll turn now to Ms. Valdez. Ms. Valdez, you have the floor for 5 minutes, and welcome to the committee.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to thank all the departments and witnesses for joining us today for this study. I'll begin by directing my questions to the Department of National Defense. Deputy Minister Matthews, you mentioned in your opening the magnitude and scale of the infrastructure work involved to reduce emissions with the older buildings, bases, and wings. What risk factors do you need to take into consideration to reduce the greenhouse gas emissions?
So when we're looking at bases and wings and the infrastructure there, it's largely a question of investing to do energy refits. In some cases, actually tear down old buildings and replace them with new. To date, we've seen, Mr. Chair, about $145 million invested in military housing for green upgrades, around $50 million on energy performance itself. We've demolished some old buildings, as I mentioned, and I think the other thing I would flag is at every base and wing we've put in an energy manager, and they're responsible for identifying energy savings opportunities on bases. Some of them cover off multiple bases, but everyone has one. And final point, and I should have mentioned this earlier, Mr. Chair, we do have now an example of our first net zero building, and it is in Gagetown, New Brunswick, since we've had some New Brunswick mentions here today. So those are the types of things we look at. No risk to operation. It's just a matter of time and money to either upgrade or replace the inefficient buildings we have on base and wing.
You kind of answered one of my second question, but just taking that a little bit further, what would you consider, or can you share with us what are the higher or urgent priorities? Because I believe you mentioned in your open that there's 20,000 buildings. That's a lot. So how are you prioritizing, which buildings or infrastructure need to be first or to be considered?
It's based on output and also ability to actually get the work done. There's some buildings, frankly, that are very difficult to upgrade. The other priority I'd flag is purchase of green energy. Some of the commitments we have, obviously, we don't produce our own electricity, so we're reliant on the market. So getting in place agreements in all provinces to allow us to buy green electricity is certainly a priority as well. Salim, anything to add there?
Nope, nothing to add to that.
Thank you very much. So directing these questions now to the Department of Transport. Mr. Keenan, can you describe what plans Transport Canada has to decrease GHG emissions from your fleet, since 80% of the emissions come from there?
Happy to, Mr. Chair. It's a great question because that is exactly the challenge we face. So every fleet has its own strategy. For vehicles on road, we're moving to zero emission vehicles. In fact, I think Transport's currently, we have 30% of our on-road fleet is zero emission vehicles. I think we're the number one in the Government of Canada. The Treasury Board can correct me if I'm not mistaken. The big one is ferries. That's the biggest source of emissions. And so a key part of the strategy is the procurement of the two new ferries for the Eastern Ferry Service. And they're currently being designed, and we're working with the shipyard to optimize design to reduce fuel consumption and carbon emissions as a result. So those would be the two examples of significant changes, both in terms of equipment and practice. And I'll actually just complete the example with the National Aerial Surveillance Program. So we run a fleet of aerial surveillance for environmental purposes. We're beginning where we can to swap a Dash 8 mission for a drone mission. Some of the whale surveillance actually off of New Brunswick, because we're having a New Brunswick theme here today, is, for example, we find that we're able to do some of those whale observation missions with drones, which is as or more effective than the Dash 8. Every hour on mission of the drone is a 96% reduction in carbon emissions in terms of the fuel burn relative to a Dash 8. So where we can swap the mission, it's a great example of a management practice that reduces our carbon emissions quite significantly.
Thank you. All very exciting stuff. Can you also share as well similar train of thought, which is what type of risk factors do you need to take into consideration as well as we're transitioning to a greener future?
I think similar to, because we have so many emissions from transportation fleet, well, it's different in composition, similar challenge to D&D. One of the key risk factors, for example, in in some of our aircraft is actually the transition to, you can change the mission, you can reduce the hours, but it's the transition to a sustainable aviation fuel. And that's an interesting one, Mr. Chair, because we see the opportunities for a reasonably economic transition towards sustainable aviation fuel are literally getting better by the year. There's a lot of risk.
Thank you. I agree it's interesting, and I hope someone will come back and ask you more about it. You've certainly piqued our interest. Maintenant, Madame Sinclair-Desgagnés, vous avez la parole pour 2 minutes 30 secondes, s'il vous plaît.
We'll now go to Ms. Sinclair-Desgagnés. You've got 2 minutes. Thank you. I'd like to have some quick answers to my questions. We talked about Crown corporations, and we, as part of the Greening the Government strategy. My question for you, Mr. Flack. Is it normal, in your opinion, to ask the Crown corporations to also have, or to include them into the strategy for the government? It's normal, as the government did, to ask them to produce strategies through the mechanisms that I described. If it's via our report, well, that's where we need to hold consultations, as we've done. Well, I'd like to ask the same question of Mr. Marcoux. As Commissioner for the Environment and Sustainable Development, do you think that the strategy should be common and should also include the department and the Crown corporations? Yes, of course. It's part of an organizational system that the government has chosen, but it's all the government. It's a whole-of-government approach, so the strategy for greening the government needs to have a consistent application for all of the for the entire government. Excellent. And I'd like to wrap up with this. I think it's important to mention that on several occasions I've heard that, oh, we've got time between now and 2050. And I think that's unfortunate, because when we think about our children, they're going to be grandparents in 2050, or older parents, if you will, depending on how healthy they are. And I think it'll be too late if we don't act more quickly. This strategy is important. It needs to be demanding. It needs to be built on a daily basis, and it needs to start now. And it requires firm timelines between now and 2050. So I hope that the data will be gathered better and that a strategy will be put in place. And we have an example. The Quebec government has committed to reducing greenhouse gas emissions, to use lighter emitting vehicles, to reduce. These are very clear, precise commitments that the Quebec government has made. Will the government of Canada do the same? Well, unfortunately, we won't get the answer to that question today, but I hope to get the answer to that question soon. Thank you very much.
You have the floor now for 2.5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and thank you very much again to the witnesses. I think this is our final round. Thanks for being present on this important discussion. Just want to lead off on what my honourable colleague from the Bloc just mentioned in relation to how critical this strategy is for the leadership of the government. And I think that when we talk about a whole-of-government approach, we have to really account for the circumstances that the government as a whole is approached with. And one of them, of course, is the innovation challenge. We've heard it from multiple ministry officials today that the innovation challenge is present. So when contemplating or even imagining what 2030 or 2025, 2030, 2050 looks like, I am concerned that we do not have a strong or robust enough system to give credit, the credit that Canadians deserve in terms of stability for this plan. Just want to make that thought very present, especially as it relates to the Ministry of Defence. And this is nothing against the ministry's own plans, but it's particular to the actual condition that's facing the ministry. You're being asked consistently and at an increasing rate to deploy your services on behalf of Canadians across the country, in particular to combat climate emergencies as they arise. These are increasing, both in severity and cost. And so it's incumbent upon the government, I think, and members of the opposition to ask the question, what could this strategy look like in 2050? And would the ministry agree that it's time that we actually preserve the mandate of the Ministry of Defence, which is to ensure that we have national security, rather than so much the domestic deployment of these of your services? Because I think it's going to change how you develop green strategies, particularly when it comes to fuel. Some fuels are more dangerous to deploy overseas than they are, for example, domestically. Some fuels are going to be challenging to actually obtain overseas than they are domestically. And so I see a gap, a growing concern that the actual greening of the government strategy, which is important, can affect the Ministry of Defense mandate. And so I think it's important that the government understand this really important piece, because I think it leads to the next question, which I think for parliamentarians is an interesting one, which is the creation of a new form of force that can actually deal with domestic climate change disasters. This is something that I hope that the Ministry of Defense knows about. And Mr. Matthews, in your own description, is this a threat to your plan?
Thank you for the question. I think two things. Number one, the department has indeed noticed an increase in tempo in terms of the number and frequency of responses in terms of domestic events. And so it is something we factor into our operations, both domestic and abroad. I don't think it will totally answer your question, the question posed by the member here, Mr. Chair, but I think my colleague Nancy might be worth her spending 2 minutes talking about the plans that the Navy and the Air Force have to decarbonize early days.
I am going to have to not allow that just because the member's time has expired. Another member might come back to you on that, or if there's a request that you perhaps submit something in writing, we could do that. But I'm afraid I just don't have that time to allot. I'm going to turn now to
Mr. Chair, can we get that in writing? Sorry, did you say we can get that in writing? Okay, perfect.
If it pleases the committee, yes, and if you could provide some background information to the committee, that'd be very, very helpful. I'm going to turn now to MP Cram. You have the floor for 5 minutes.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair, and I would like to continue with witnesses from National Defense. So let's say it's the year 2050, and the F-35 fighter jets are still in the air, and we're still sailing our frigates. What does and we don't have a way to fully decarbonize them. What does the carbon offset market look like for those military assets?
Mr. Chair, I think too early for us to speculate about what the market might look like in 2050, but I think if it's relevant, we can have Nancy talk about the decarbonization plans, but in terms of comments on the market, too early to say. Go ahead, Nancy.
With all due respect, I would like to stick with the carbon offset market. I would like to make sure I understood an answer to Mr. Macaulay's question a bit earlier about the location of fuel purchases for the frigates. It was my understanding that if the fuel is purchased in Canada, then it counts against Canada's emissions, but if the fuel is purchased in another country, it counts against that other country's emissions. Is that correct?
To be clear, we are only tracking the fuel purchased by D&D and Canadian Armed Forces.
Okay, from Canada or from other countries as well?
I don't have that information right now.
Okay, if we could get that answer in writing, that would be very helpful. Sure. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's just think about this for a minute. So let's say it's 2050. And we have to meet our zero emissions targets, and a war breaks out, and we have to bomb an enemy oil refinery or something like that. How does that work? I mean, how do we have to plant so many trees based on how many enemy oil refineries we bomb? How could that possibly work?
I think the methodology we're talking about today, Mr. Chair, is around the impact from the operations. I can't speculate on how one might count for that type of event. I'm not sure the methodology has evolved that far, but we're very much focused on tracking our own emissions from operations, and as I've mentioned, we still have some work to do on that front.
Maybe that's how we do the offsets. Okay, fair enough. I'll be curious to see how that plan shapes up. So if we go back to page 23 of the report, paragraph 2.78, it says, we found that National Defense's carbon plan aligned with the emission reduction targets outlined in the 2017 strategy, but that actions in the plan were not detailed enough to indicate how the department would achieve the 2050 target. So I'll give you the opportunity now to elaborate if there's anything else that needs to be said, other than we're waiting for the new technologies and we're going to go into the carbon offset market if need be.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. A little more detail. I think the message here is that we have more planning to do to identify more actions to get us there. I think the report is accurate that there are some plans that we still have to come forward with to identify how we will make 2050. I think it's more energy refits of buildings, the things we've already talked about today in terms of getting there. And you'll see the roadmap and the risks and all the things we've already talked about today get articulated over the next year that will show how we intend to get there.
Okay, thank you very much. And in the time I have left, I'd like to turn to the representatives from the Treasury Board. Could you speak to what are the projected costs per year of the net zero plan?
Yes, so we've had departments do decarbonisation plans for their real property. We brought an expert to aggregate those. So over a 30-year period to 2050, the incremental cost is $3 billion to decarbonise. That represents about 1% of what we would spend on real property over that period of time, normally without decarbonisation.
Okay, and Mr. Chair, how much time do I have left?
About 40 seconds.
About 40. All right, I'll turn it over to my colleague, Garnet Jess.
Well, thank you, Mr. Cram, for your generosity. I just wanted to follow up to my earlier questions about VIP travel. Could the committee please be provided with information about the emissions associated with VIP travel for the Prime Minister, ministers, and broken out specifically so we know, and going back with comparisons over time, let's say the last 5 years. Can we be provided with that information?
Mr. Chair, we'll take a look and see what we can provide based on our records.
Thank you.
Thank you. And that is the time. Turning now to Ms. Yip, you have the floor for 5 minutes, and this will be the last question.
And I'm happy to turn it back to the greening government strategy. This question is directed to Mr. Flack. Some departments in the report do not have a set date for the release of their greenhouse gas emission reduction and net zero plans. Why is that? And what will Treasury Board do to ensure these plans get released?
So Malcolm can speak a bit more to it, but we've taken a staged approach. So for the real property plans, which are the plans you're talking about, we started with the departments that represent the overwhelming bulk of emissions, 81% of emissions. That was 8 departments. Those plans are completed. The plan was in the Greening 3 plan, which will be next year. We would move to have the additional 19 departments have their plans in place. So because the methodologies had to be developed and approved, we've been phasing it in where we start with the departments that represent the most emissions and then proceed to the other ones that can do that. But Malcolm, maybe there's other things you want to add on this.
I mean, I think you gave a pretty clear response. We've also made a commitment to the Management Action Plan to clarify that in the next greening government strategy to actually put a commitment in by when those plans would be in place.
Okay, thank you. Is there any collaborative work or best practices being shared with other countries to work on this emission reduction? I guess, Mr. Flack?
Yeah, in fact, I mean, really, thank you to Malcolm and the team. And it pointed out it's a small team, the greening government team, about a dozen people. But they, with the United States, have been co-chairing an international group, a greening government group that they've really set up and pioneered with over 50 countries to do this type of sharing. One of the reasons that this takes time is, in many cases, we're developing new methodologies. We want them to be standardized according to international practices. Those are not necessarily all there for governments. So that's why we've taken this approach with an international coalition to move quickly and to learn from others, but frankly advance the progress in other countries as well, which is one of the reasons one of Malcolm's sidelines is taking questions from other governments, provincial or international, in terms of what best practices are that we've applied, and similarly trying to learn from them in terms of what they're doing. So that's one of the reasons this has had to go in steps with the 3 strategies, because not all of the pieces, including the way to quantify in a viable way, Scope 3 emissions were all understood. And if we have different governments taking very different approaches to how they measure this, then it would be very difficult from a comparability perspective to know where it's going. So that's been the approach with this learning, and I think we're proceeding well. Completely take the point on speed being of the essence, as the commissioner did. We are trying to move it as quickly as we can forward, but part of that is using international practice to be able to accelerate the work.
Can you give me an example of a best practice that we've taken from another country to use?
In terms of, we've been talking with countries on the embodied carbon, so the carbon that is in construction materials. So we have to essentially extract them, process that material, and then put it in our buildings. That has a carbon footprint. So we've been working with the U.S. Center for Environmental Quality and the General Services Administration in the U.S. to look at their equivalent to the Greening Government Strategy, their executive order, and the plans and processes they're putting in place. We're especially interested in partnering with the U.S. because a lot of our markets are North American.
Thank you. Mr. Keenan, do you feel or think that the net zero emission target by 2050 is realistic or achievable given your present plans?
Thank you for the question, Mr. Chair. I think the Net Zero 2050 plan is ambitious and will require a lot of effort and innovation. But given the pace of innovation we see on low carbon technology and how rapidly it's evolving, we believe there's a feasible pathway. Not every element of that pathway has been nailed down yet, but it's changing in the right direction every year.
So you would say that, are we on target with the timelines?
I would say that we are, like D&D, we have not figured out every last change to get us to net zero 2050, but the rate of progress and the evolution of the carbon neutral roadmap is such that I think we're on a pathway where we can get there.
And thank you very, very much. I appreciate everyone sticking pretty close to the time today, and even members in some cases self-timing themselves. That's always helpful. I want to thank all the witnesses for appearing today. I believe everyone was in person, and that is superb. Another sign that we're getting back to normal every day. I'm going to suspend the meeting, but I've got a few things to say before I do. First of all, I'll excuse the witnesses, so thank you again. Thank you again for coming back a second time. For members of Parliament that are virtual, as I am, we're going to log off and log back on. So you've got a few minutes to do that, but please do that right away because we have a hard stop at the top of the hour. And clerk, could you have the technician just look for me? Because of my IT setup here, it's not my office or devices. I might again log in as a guest, so they might need to flip me over like they did before. So you might not see me, but I am going to. I have the in-camera coordinates. I'm going to use them, but it might not come up as my name again. They can switch me over, but they need to look for me. We'll see you all soon in a few minutes.
Thank you.